Hello and welcome to the 12 Months to Marathon podcast with me, John Hill, the running podcast for the over 35s with Marathon Dreams. Episode 47, another very, very special interview today. I'm very honoured and privileged to have Louise Butcher with me today. Hello, Louise, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, John. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. I'm very welcome. Now, for watchers and listeners of this podcast, you've probably come across Louise. She's been on the TV, she's been on the news, very famously is an advocate for breast cancer awareness and a breast cancer survivor, and has run the London Marathon twice, topless, which is kind of how I come across Louise initially because of following on those pages. It's quite an inspiring story. Another reason why I wanted to talk to Louise as well is because she's been very vocal and advocate of ADHD. She's talked about that openly on her social media profiles, and having a son that's neurodivergent myself, I wanted to. That was two big reasons, and I think she's got a fantastic story. So she's also an author, and I've also read a musician and a songwriter as well.
Yeah, I think that is part of the ADHD sort of
Oh, is
creative
it?
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that's where it all comes out.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, it's knowing that myself, and there's the old argument, isn't there? We're all on the spectrum, and there's that creativity, and I see that in my son how creative he is, and how and it's a shame that we stifle things like that. But anyway, it's another conversation for another day, so we'll get into that in a second. So, yes, and you're also soon to be an author of a book, Going Topless, as I know.
Yeah, that's coming out on the 26th of June.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah, that's like the story of the journey of becoming resilient. It's kind of like going back to my childhood,
Right.
all the struggles I've been through. So yeah, it's perfect for anyone who wants to be inspired into doing things that they didn't think they could do.
Fantastic. And we'll put all the links and everything else into the description of the podcast. And of course, as I always do, it's Louise Butcher 39 on Instagram if you want to drop her a follow over there, which I'd highly recommend that you do to follow the story and the journey so far. So the first question for me, I like to keep this very open and very in your hands, really, because I want you to feel comfortable to tell me as much as you want, Louise, really. So talk me through that journey then, from how did we get to where we are today?
So yeah, I mean it's kind of been an ongoing sort of struggle with my mental health throughout life,
Right.
sort of ups and downs, never really understanding what that was about,
Yeah.
not being able to manage it. So ending up sort of hyper focusing on negative things. I had health anxiety, anxiety. I mean, anxiety had been a massive part of my life. Never really feeling like I was fitting in, or feeling a little bit sort of on the outskirts. I was a musician, so that was really good because I wasn't conforming.
Right.
Could never fit into 9 to 5 I just didn't feel like I was in that society mold. And I couldn't put my finger on why that was. And then it all sort of came out with the cancer journey and then my kids were both diagnosed with ADHD. And then it all sort of blew up. And that's when everything made sense, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So how does I guess from making it relevant to what we talk about here, how did we get to running as the thing? How did we get from all of that
Yeah.
to London Marathon? And to be fair, quite a I'll use the word famous. A lot of people in the running community, I would say, know you now because of this. So how did we get from what you've just explained to there?
So that came from not being able to cope.
Right.
So it was kind of like I kept running away from things.
Okay.
It's really ironic because
Yeah.
I just couldn't cope in being in the house, all this stuff going on in my head. So I kept running off. And I didn't understand what I was running from. And then as I kept running, it kind of felt better. I felt better. I felt like I could control things better. And then the running became part of the management of my brain and
Okay.
the management of the way I was feeling. And then the more I did that, the more I wanted to run because obviously the endorphins and the dopamine I was getting.
Mm.
Then I kind of hyper focused on the London Marathon when I saw it on the telly. I was like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, when you just get inspired by these people
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
these amazing things. I sat on the couch and I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. And that was 2021.
Yeah.
And so I started training. I didn't get in the ballot because you never do you?
You don't.
So I got in the virtual London Marathon, which is when you do it.
Yeah.
And I started training and I was like, I was living the dream. I was like running, I was managing my ADHD, I was feeling amazing. And then I got diagnosed with cancer.
When was that? So we've got a timeline. When was the cancer
That
diagnosis?
would have been April 2022.
April 22. Okay.
Yeah. And that was bizarre because that wasn't anything, there was no symptoms. I wasn't like, oh God, something wrong. I just had I obviously had my health anxiety and I was still coping with it with the running. So I went for a mammogram which I paid for privately because I wanted to make sure I was all right. It wasn't anything, it was just, I want peace of mind. And it came back really clear.
Yeah.
And because it came back clear, I was like, I've got the confidence now to have a good delve. And that's when I found a little tiny thing in my breast. I'm like a little, wasn't even a lump. Then I went for an ultrasound, and then the whole cancer thing. Got diagnosed with lobular breast cancer.
Right. Okay. And was that a if you don't mind me asking, was that hereditary? Is that any hereditary?
No,
No, no, okay.
nothing in my family.
Yeah.
Complete shock. And then obviously we talked about all the treatments, and I had to have the mastectomy. And then they found 5 centimeters really close to the chest wall, thinking it might have spread. Luckily, it hadn't.
Right.
And then it kind of went from there. But the running became even more of a focus because I couldn't cope
Right.
again. So I used the running to cope. And it was about, a lot of runners will understand this, it was about the productivity, the constant getting better, the
Yeah.
constant not being weak. And that's kind of how I coped with that cancer journey.
Right. And because I spoke to, I don't know if you know Christina Cocaluto, I spoke to her a few weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about that. And so was the mastectomy the only option? If you don't mind me asking,
Yeah,
yeah, it was.
it
Okay.
was eventually, because lobular is it grows really in and out of the breast tissue, so they don't know where it is.
Right.
But it's not like they could go, right, we'll do a lumpectomy and just take out a little bit, because it was
Right.
everywhere and they didn't know where it was, so they had to take the breast off. The sad thing about that was they wouldn't take the other one off,
Right.
which is a lot of why I do what I do. So I just constantly advocated that I wanted that off, because it was just, I couldn't move on. I couldn't be productive. I couldn't be something better with one. So yeah, are you in the background? Sorry, I've got my child.
It's all right. It's all right. Mine aren't here, so if mine were, don't worry. You'd hear this door here banging.
Yeah, it's always
Don't
the
worry,
way.
I'm not in a fancy studio here, folks. Sometimes I like it if you'll hear my wife. Yeah, yeah. We like to keep it real because we like to keep it real here. Because one of
Yeah,
the things
and
people say
she's
to me,
really, really
you're
good
you're
actually.
relatable. I'm like, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
You're relatable.
she's
This
really
is
good actually, because usually because she's ADHD,
yeah,
she
yeah.
can't stop talking, so she's doing really well, because she's
Yeah,
actually
brilliant.
trying to be
That's good.
quiet.
That's good. Well, I understand that as much as anybody else. So, when you say about having the other breast off, because I just wanted to, that's interesting for me. Was that that was purely, was that more of a symbolic thing? Obviously, I'm assuming you didn't have to have it off for a health reason. It was just you wanted to be a bit more, when you said a bit more symbolic, because I know you've talked about body positivity. So I'm just curious on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there
So
was
was it
quite a few reasons. There was the reason of the fact I couldn't look at it anymore, because I
okay? Of
thought the cancer might be there, or I'd always be
course.
worried about it being there. So it was health, but it was also symmetry. It's kind
Yes.
of like you never in a woman's life ever have one breast, whereas you do as a child not have breasts, even though
Yeah.
you have nipples. So it's kind of like it just didn't feel right. And obviously then you've got to either wear a fake one, or else you just I couldn't move on with it there, so I had to come off.
Yeah. Okay. So prior to entering the marathon in 21, how
Yeah,
long had you been running for before that?
not long. I'd been running a little bit inconsistently, about 2 years, but
Okay.
it only really got serious when I started training for that virtual London Marathon, which was 2021, 2022. So not long at all, no.
Yeah. And I don't like to assume with this because, of course, same reason for me when I first did London. It's that symbolic. It's very much an iconic event. Was there any particular reason why you marathon? Was it the London Marathon or was it the marathon distance that was
It was
captured?
the both. It was both.
Was
So
it
I
okay?
think as well, with the way that my brain works, is I can't do non-rewarding stuff. So I
Yeah.
couldn't start at a 5K because that wouldn't be rewarding enough. It
Okay.
had to be 26.2 miles,
Yeah.
because I never worked up to it. I never did any races before that. I didn't go and do a 10K down the road or a
Okay.
local race. I just went, no, I'm doing that. And it was kind of like, it has to be big for me to get a reward from it. And obviously London, it was the iconic, and it was
Yeah.
just the feeling I got from watching it. It was just
Yeah.
that feeling.
Yeah. Absolutely. So how, in terms of, because I'm assuming a lot of people would run for, because I mean, wasn't me personally. I ran for a cancer charity because I lost mom. Mom died of cancer 2014, and I ran the marathon 8 weeks after and raised money for that. So obviously not a similar situation, but obviously for a charity. So a lot of people run for charity, and perhaps a lot of people have had cancer and run for charity. So how did we get to right? not only I'm going to be an advocate for this thing, not only am I going to run for charity, I'm also going to go do the whole topless thing. How did we get there?
That came, so the first marathon, the virtual I did with a top on because it was only 6 weeks after that second mastectomy. So obviously I
Okay.
was still swollen.
Yeah.
And it hadn't entered my head then, the toplessness. What it was, I'd done a lot of research with ladies, and obviously the way I felt about the shame if you don't have breasts put back,
Yeah.
about the way that you don't feel like society's going to accept you. And I just thought, oh my God, this feels really wrong, because why, if something saved your life and you've lost those breasts that are yours, would you? Some people want to put it back, but why would you need to? And it was kind of about the need. So I was like, I think I need to get it out there. But during the run-ins, flipped it into turning that pity and shame into strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And do you do all your runs topless? I
Yeah,
mean,
all of them. I
okay.
train. You all right? Sorry, my dog's having you all right? Okay. I think he's having a bit of a panic attack. He's fine.
Okay.
Calm sweet. He's all right.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, he's just probably a bit.
That's all right.
You're right. He's fine. So yeah, so all my training, because every time I go out, to be honest, it feels abnormal now to wear a top.
Right. Okay.
Because I've got used to it, your body adapts. It feels restricted when I wear
Yeah.
a top when I run, because it feels so free. And also, I don't want to miss an opportunity where people see it,
Yeah.
because it sparks conversation. It makes people think. It makes people change perception. Kids see it and go, and they ask the mum, why, what's this? So
Yeah.
it's always that, well, not am I only just being productive for my running, I'm being productive when I go out, because I'm sparking these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose you've touched on it a little bit. What would be your ultimate goal for that element of it? So the topless side, what's the ultimate message you want to deliver that we can
The ultimate message was always to normalize it, was always
normalize
to
it? Yeah.
make, and I think we're getting there now, because I mean, I never asked London Marathon organisers if I could run topless, because I knew there'd be red tape, there'd be a no. So I just went and did it.
Yeah.
And obviously that's advocacy for you. You don't ask, do you? Because if you ask, you just, it's just like anything else.
Yeah.
And then this year, obviously they kind of knew. And also, although I've done it and no one stopped me, I never knew if they accepted it, but I
Yeah.
actually saw it on one of their reels, when they advertise it, and I'm on there and I'm like, they've accepted it. And it
Oh,
was always about the acceptance of it, not being shameful, not being, oh, cover it up, cover it up. The fact as well as women, that we're more than breasts, and that if you haven't got breasts, you're not a woman, or you've lost a part of femininity. It was always about that message.
right. Fantastic. And do you raise money for a specific charity, or is it of numerous charities? Do you do any of that stuff?
Yeah, I do. My big races, I do breast cancer now always, because I
Always.
just
Yeah.
think if you stick with one,
Yeah.
that, and breast cancer now obviously is one of the biggest charities.
Yeah. Of course.
But I mean, a lot of the work I do around my local areas for my local hospital charity. I mean, we do things like topless swims, which I've inspired, and
Right.
that's kind of a big thing now as well. And that's not women necessarily with mastectomies. That's women with their boobs out. And last year we had 250 women
Brilliant.
going into the sea, and it was so iconic, because we were literally holding hands and walking. It was about the magic and the empowerment of women, and it was just brilliant.
So when you first, because it sounds like you've had, well, I'm going to ask a couple of questions here. You said that you've had a couple of challenges in terms of that was the cancer. So when you first started running from the mental health side, what triggered the actual running? What was it that said running? Because for those of us, I'll just caveat this, because some people might think, well, it's obvious it improves you. Well, it is if you do it, but if you
Yeah.
don't do it, it isn't. It's like when people run automatically, it's like, well, it's great for your mental health. That's because you're doing it. I want to talk to people who perhaps aren't, because sometimes the worst thing in the world when you're in the hole is leaving the house,
Yeah.
doing anything. So how did we get to there? How did you make this to say I'm going to be brave and go out and run?
Because my anxiety, my health anxiety was the worst. I would say that was worse than cancer. And
Okay.
this sounds horrendous to people, but cancer has a structure. So when you get diagnosed with cancer, you get all these people around you giving you flowers, and they all understand, because
Yeah.
cancer is more understandable than mental health. They can see what's going on. And it's got a structure. You get your surgeon, then you get your oncologist, then you get appointments, and you've got this line. Whereas when you've got mental health or like like ADHD or OCDs, or like with me, I got my health anxiety. There's no help. There's no structure.
Yeah.
You are literally in this black hole of wholeness, and nobody can see it. Nobody understands it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, there was one point where I had it so bad, and I'd had a really horrendous miscarriage that I'd nearly died from. And it
Right.
triggered all sorts of problems. And I had this health anxiety. I couldn't get my kids to school. I could not get up in the morning without feeling like fight or flight, where I was shaking, panicking, having a panic attack. I was laid out on the floor thinking I was dying.
Mm.
And I just thought, there's nothing more. There's nothing worse than this. There's nothing worse than this. And then the bravery came from when I kept running away from it. And a lot of people say you're brave when you're what I'm doing now, and I am not, compared to what I did when I could not get my kids to school.
Yeah, cool.
And I just kept going outside, because outside made me feel better, actually.
Okay.
Because I don't know, it just made me feel less of a individual, and I felt connected.
Yeah.
And then I'd just run. And then it was just about knowing that there was nothing worse than that feeling. And running, although whatever reason, some people maybe don't want to run because the way that they feel people judge them, or they don't think they can do it. I think you hit a part in your life where you just think this can't get any worse, and that's where mine came from.
So it was like a rock bottom, the only way is up.
Yeah, it was totally rock bottom. I mean, I didn't want to be here. I did not want to be here. There was 2 points in my life where I didn't want to be here, and that was one of them, and that was due to this, my brain. And the second was when I'd got diagnosed with the cancer, but I was a little bit into the journey and I didn't know where I was with it, and I couldn't cope with life. And that's another time I didn't want to be here either. And the running stopped that thought, because it gave me that. The chemicals obviously do a lot, because they're making you they lift your mood, but it's also about, I don't know, it's about the connecting to something bigger than you. And I think that with me that was what it was about. I was so much an individual. I was so enclosed and isolated that when I connected to nature, and it sounds really cliche, but when I was in this big open world where it wasn't just about me, it became easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get so with that, did you have a diagnosis of what it was, or was it just anxiety? Was there actually
I had diagnosis, of health anxiety.
How it was actually called health anxiety, right? Okay.
Well, it's the old word was hypochondria, and I think a lot of people
Right,
laugh at
okay.
that, because a lot of people get a little bit of it and they go, "Oh, I think of it," but health anxiety is horrendous, because the anxiety that I had counselling in the end. I had about 10 months, but the anxiety you usually stuck in is bad, because I've had it. You're going around in this circle, but the health anxiety, because it's going around in your head, it creates the symptoms in your body, the fight or flight, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, then, because you're getting fight or flight symptoms, you think there's something wrong with me. My heart's racing. I'm going to have a heart attack. Oh, I'm getting this dizzy feeling. I must have a brain tumor. Oh my God, I've got this. So it's actually worse, because the symptoms become another little circle into the whole depth of despair of, oh my God, I must be dying.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, thank you for that. Appreciate the openness as well on that, because these things are quite sensitive. So I appreciate that. So with the obviously this is relevant to myself as well, having a son who's neurodivergent. How do you manage it with, because both your children have got ADHD, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that with running and as much as you're comfortable with here? How do you manage that with your running and what you've got going on, and how does that fit?
What's really ironic about that is when I wasn't doing the running and when I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I wasn't managing it. And yet I am now. And that's because what's really strange about what I do with the running and getting rid of, because I think with ADHD or neurodivergence, it's all about this energy. Well, with ADHD, definitely, you've got this energy going on.
Yeah.
You're hyperactive. So it's either in your body or in your head. And especially with girls, it goes into the head. And that's where the anxiety comes from.
Okay.
So all this stuff was going on before the running started. And obviously my kids were ADHD, but I didn't really know. I mean, we had a diagnosis of Oliver. He had Tourette's syndrome first, like tics, which is associated with ADHD. I couldn't concentrate at school, and then we got him diagnosed, and then she was just like me, and she's totally it. You can just, so I wasn't coping with that because my ADHD had gone into negativity, and I couldn't cope with the ADHD that they were coming out with. Yeah, when I put the running first, and this is what I say to people when they say, how do you fit running in? I don't fit running in. My life fits around the running, because if
Okay.
the running doesn't come first, I can't manage the life. So it's kind of like I had to flip
Yeah.
the life first, and let's fit this running in to manage the life or the ADHD symptoms, to I have to do this first. And then my children are happier and healthier. I'm a better mother. I'm a better person. So yeah, it's all about the fact that it's really ironic that we're much happier now as a family, and my kids are happier because I do put all this stuff first.
Yeah.
And it sounds really selfish, doesn't it?
It's very similar. I mean, I've been in the fitness, whatever you want to call it, world for 16 years, and it's and I've started losing weight myself 20 years ago. But it's that old classic analogy of put the mask on first on the plane, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's the old classic. It's you have to make sure that because if you can't, if I can't, look after my kids are I'm nearly 50 and my kids are nearly 6 and nearly 4. You have to have the energy to deal
yeah,
with that. You
yeah.
can't, otherwise they'll wipe you out.
Yeah, they will wipe you out. And that's the thing. I think I was tending to try and put them first
Yes.
because I thought that was the way you did it, and you were selfless doing that. But that wasn't the right way for me. For other people, fine, but for me, it wasn't, because when
Yeah.
before I put my mental health and what I was about second or third, probably fourth, below the dog, because that's what happens. You
Yeah.
do, life takes over, doesn't it?
Of course.
I couldn't do it, so I was actually might as well not have been there.
Yeah. I heard a brilliant analogy for that. It was selfish with a big S and selfish with a little s. And
Wow.
selfish with a big S, like your larger version of yourself is
Yeah.
you look after yourself
Yeah.
so you can look after others and
Yeah.
society. Selfish with the little s is sacrificing yourself because you think you're going to be able to look after everybody else. And I heard that and I thought that's really because we often see selfish as it's just this bad word. Well, actually, if you break it down like that, it's like because obviously being healthy is a lot of times you're criticised.
Yeah.
People think that you're being selfish, and yes, I've met people who are obsessed with fitness, and that's as bad as being obsessed with anything. But if you're just looking after yourself so you can be better for everybody else,
Yeah.
that's
I
never
love that. I love that, what
quite
you've
good,
just
isn't it?
said.
Yeah, it's quite
It,
good. I
it
heard that, and I was like, yeah,
explains it
that
much
seems.
smaller than what I could explain it. Like, it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And
I mean,
another thing
well,
was,
somebody from, I have to, it's difficult because I lost what I completely changed to what it's not about me, of course, but it's relevant in the sense of I completely changed who I was from a weight loss standpoint. So I was the complete opposite of the way I am now at 20,
yeah,
28, 20 years ago. And when you change, people don't like it. And they're not always, they don't always do it deliberately, but they don't like it because it creates insecurity in themselves. So,
yeah.
for
Oh
example,
my
what you're
God.
doing will
Yes.
create a lot of insecurity because people are like, there are people out there, and hopefully this is the whole point of this. There are people who listen to this who go, I want to do that. And this is to break that barrier to say, okay, well, here's somebody that's done something that is,
Wow.
I mean, you're all over social media. Look, to be fair, Louise, you're all over social media. So you really put yourself out there. So if I think if it inspires people to say actually you can change, and
You
I think that's
can.
kind of the way to look at it really. So
Yeah.
I that sings to me, and it's not
Yeah.
an excuse to go and train, run a marathon every 16 weeks and just leave your family because I've seen that happen. And that's not good. But it's about saying how does this make me better for everybody?
Yeah, that is totally true as well. And you touched upon something there that actually when you change, some people don't like it. And that is totally true because you're mirroring what they can't do in themselves or they
Absolutely.
think they can't do
Yeah.
when they actually can,
Yeah.
because anybody can change. You don't, you don't, if you, it's all up here. But I do remember we had, I lost my husband's family disowned us because of what I'm doing. And I
With
think,
the topless stuff, the stuff at the moment, or
yeah, I mean, it was like this was like about a year and a half ago. They told me to stop doing it. You need to stop now. You're going to embarrass the kids. Um, and it kind of became like they shamed me. It was a
okay.
family get together, but I don't hold it against them because quite a few of them were struggling with things in their life,
Yeah.
like hitting a
Yeah.
certain age. I think one of one of them was hitting 60 and she was really struggling with that. And I think I was just this thing sat there, and I was just sort of like projecting onto them what they wanted to do or could do or but didn't know how to, or and it was just scaring them. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the sort of like, because it wasn't that they were being vindictive. I just think it all just came out. And it is true. It does. As soon as someone does change that way, especially because I was always this anxious person over here and a little bit in the shadows, it sort of makes them look at their life. And I think, yeah, and that's really important to do. You've got to do that.
Yeah, because you don't, I mean, if you shrink to fit, you can't shrink to fit other people's model of the world. And people are, like you said, people are just projecting. And if you've got
Yeah.
compassion for people, and this takes work, this takes work, this does to have that, you can just say, well, actually, they're just projecting onto me their own stuff.
Yeah.
You've got to be, haven't you? So I think you will, I think you will. And especially now online, I imagine you're going to get
Yeah.
some stuff
I
thrown at you.
get, yeah, I get a lot, and I knew I would, because I knew that's why I was doing it, because it was
Exactly. Yeah.
always about the discussion, the argument, the perceptions, the change, and yeah, and a lot of people say like, "How do you cope with the negativity?" And I was like, "Well, I don't cope with it because I know it's there. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if it's written down online; it's in people's heads anyway. It's just never spoke about. Isn't it better that it's there? Isn't it better that it comes out?" So yeah, it was, and it's never about me. It's not about me. It's
No.
about the cause, and it's about that. No, I'm not the only woman who's had a mastectomy. I'm not the only woman who's got flat closure surgery. And so when if it's about me, it's about everyone who's had that. It's about, so it's like you're the bigger cause, and that's what I was saying about what made me feel better when I was struggling with mental health, was being something bigger than me. I think that's where people, if you can understand that, when you become, the only comfort I had when I thought I might die from cancer was that I was part of something bigger than just, if I died, that would be it. It was just Louise over here. I wasn't connected to anything or the universe, or I hadn't done anything that changed. So it was like that whole being something other than you, an individual.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's very powerful. That's very, very powerful. Having that
yeah,
purpose beyond you, very powerful. So, wow, good, brilliant. There we go. So, what would you say then, to anybody out there who is going through a tough time, in context to them, of course, because it's
yeah,
all relative,
right.
and they're perhaps looking at someone who maybe runs, they might not even started yet, and they're thinking that's possibly something I want to do. What would you say to them?
I'd say go. A lot of what I say is don't think. I don't think.
Yeah,
I mean, if I think, forget it. The reason I do what I do now is because I don't. It's because I live in the moment.
yeah,
I live in the now, and everything is literally now. So time doesn't exist, and if it does, it's in like layers.
yeah,
And I read Eckhart Tolle, and he taught me so much about how anxiety and things like that, and talking yourself out of things,
yeah,
comes from living in the future. If you live in right at this moment and you're not thinking about anything else, you can't be anxious, because anxiety stems from, you're always in the future, because you're
yeah,
thinking about, well, what would happen, or I've got to put the tea on, so you're anxious. Whereas if you just live, so I would say to them, first of all, is literally try and really be grateful. This
yeah.
is how I really learn, like the mindfulness of the gratitude of just being there, of
Mm,
just being able to breathe, of just being alive. And then kind of, if you wanted to run, do that in that moment. So if you're outside and you don't plan a run. Like, the planning is always about the future, isn't it? So you're anxious, oh, I won't be able to do it, or I've got a plan, or just do it. So if
yeah,
you're outside one day and you're like, try and get right in that moment and be grateful and just sort of maybe jog. That's what I said. Don't plan, don't think, just do. And that's how I think. And then once you get that feeling from it, then that will motivate you more. But the whole, oh, I think I might do it, or I'll plan it for next week, or what if I do that? It just does, it's
yeah,
not going to do it, because then
yeah.
you talk, if you're in a bad mindset or a negative mindset, you'll talk yourself out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I heard a brilliant another one in a similar field about anxiety, and it said anxiety is you projecting the past onto the future.
Yeah.
So you think that it's going to be the way it always has,
Yeah.
and it's not. You can
No.
actually wake up every day and go, and as we talked about change, you
Yeah.
can wake up every day and go, this can be different. I can do this. And this has been the biggest thing for me personally in my
Yeah.
change process has been, you know what, actually, it doesn't have tomorrow can be what do I want to do? Tomorrow can be different. And that's so frightfully simple, it'll scare, but it's true, isn't it? We always project, oh, it's always been this way, so it's always going to be.
Going to be that way. And the thing is, the past is only the past because of what you were thinking in the past before that
Uh-huh.
about the future. So you
Absolutely.
just constantly you carrying on, and the past, which is right back, will
Yeah.
have come from other people's
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
past. So you're just carrying on this whole pattern of nonsense.
Well, and it doesn't. And the thing is, you're singing, you're singing to me, literally. The thing is, it's like this is another thing I've realized over the last couple of years. The past doesn't exist.
No.
It's not because it's not there anymore. The actual physical. So, like the conversation we just had doesn't exist anymore. The only place it exists is in this abstract thing we create as humans. We're meaning making machines. That's another way I've heard us described. But the truth is, the actual physical physics of the past has gone. It's
Yeah.
actually gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So the only reason is the importance you place on it, which is you deciding to say that's important and I'm going to stick with it. But the actual physics is gone. It doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore.
It doesn't, and that's the thing. The past or the future don't exist. It's always about the present,
And the
and
decision.
yeah, and I learned that really harshly when, like, when I was told, it might, the cancer might have spread, and
Yeah.
then obviously all through your head, you're like, oh my God, how long have I got? What have I actually done?
Yeah.
Is this it? And it was a bit like, is this it? Is this it? And then I realized I'd been living in this whole. It felt like I'd been, like a lot of people say, life's life. We go do our job with the school, the house. I mean, the house, a lot of the reason my husband's family disowned us was they didn't understand the way I started to live. So we downsized the house. The house to me meant nothing.
Yes.
Materialism, when everything around me just was meaningless, it just went, what is all this stuff? And we had this house which we were paying a mortgage for, and I was like, what? Why? So we got rid of this house, got rid of the mortgage, downsized.
Yeah.
We had like a 2-bedroomed, which we knocked into a 3. It's smaller. Actually, it's not. It's a terrace. It's not a detached, which I think people live in this thing of, well, if you're successful, you've gone from a terrace and then you get this detached. I'm like, oh my God, it's rubbish. What is this? And we got rid of the mortgage, and then I could live freer, so I could do more running. Oh, and it just totally made sense. And it was like I'd been living for 50 years, 49 years of absolute stuff that made no sense.
Yeah. It's Steve Jobs said when he first got diagnosed, he said, when you're faced with your own mortality, he said, what's left to fear?
Yeah.
And it's true, isn't it? And like I remember when Mom died, there was this. She went from this like panicked like to this peace. Like when
Yeah.
she was a few hours from the end, it was just there was just this peace because all she had was the acceptance that this is it, and
Yeah.
nothing else mattered. And I think it's amazing how we identify what you just said there, how we identify with stuff.
Yeah.
And stuff defines us. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with having stuff. There's nothing wrong with stuff. But it's like stuff doesn't necessarily, if you define yourself by stuff, and Mom's death taught me this, I was like, she would, none of it mattered. Like,
No.
that bit, the bit she missed when she was vacuuming, all these little things that we get angry about. Yeah, you've downsized. Who cares? Because in
I
the end,
know.
you're not going to sit there and go, "Oh yeah, I wish I had a bigger garden."
It's so
Are you?
true.
Are you?
And then what's really funny is you say this stuff to people, and it was said to me before I had what happened to me, and
Yeah,
it goes in, but it kind of goes out the other ear.
yeah, yeah,
But it really goes in and stays there when you get told it and you really feel it. And I'd
yeah,
felt it for about 4 months because I didn't really know for about 4 months whether or not it spread. So I was living in this 4 months of, oh my God, I might
yeah.
only have 6 months. And it really, and I think that was what was frustrating at this dinner table, was because I couldn't explain this to them,
No,
because
no.
you have to have been there. And because they were going, you can't downsize, you've got kids, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I just went, and they've got this massive house. And I went, this is absolute nonsense. And they looked at me like I'd literally, I couldn't explain it. It was frustrating. And I think sometimes you just got to leave stuff. You just got to go,
Yeah.
right, they don't get it, but I get it. And thousands of other people get it. So, and then I'm just going to pass the message on to people who want to get it,
Yeah.
really.
Well, here's a bit of a lesson, I think, for that, and to help people, the listeners, because of the way we are as humans,
Yeah.
when somebody says you can't, they have to mean I can't because they're not you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
we only exist in our own world. So when people say you can't, they actually mean I can't because
Yeah.
you can only reflect back what you are. You can't tell somebody because you're not them. So
No.
when I heard that, I was like, actually, yeah, they're actually saying, well,
Wow. Oh
I
my
can't
God.
downsize. I can't downsize. Oh, hang on a minute. Let's deflect this so it takes the pressure off. You can't down. Well, actually, what they're saying is I can't. You can
Yeah.
run a marathon. No, I can't. And
Yeah.
that's what it's actually saying. So
It's
I think
actually
that's a
good.
very important message for anybody out there. That's because we deal with a lot of this. I deal with a lot of people who deal with because when I coach in the coaching sphere, most of it's the mindset stuff. It's like you said, like structure, that word. Marathon training, for example, is that discipline. It's just structure. And
Yeah.
it's just a structure, and you know this, but it's the how you think about yourself. Because most people would be able to do something like that if they didn't think less of themselves. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's that, how do you conquer that bit? Which I think that bit's really, really what you said there about all the whole thing and the whole. That's why I wanted to ask you that because I think it all fits nicely in. So people are listening to this. There's the message, and obviously a lot of this stuff seems to. I mean, I just when I speak to people like you, I just want to go for a run because I get so inspired.
I know. I'm
You
feeling
know what
like
I
that
mean?
now. I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I'm
I'm
like,
really gonna go
through
running.
a wall. Uh, but you do, don't you? Because
Yeah.
I think it's good to have that. So I'm conscious of time. You're a busy woman. So my final question? Well, I asked one of my final questions. What's next for you?
There's quite a lot coming up.
Right.
And it's I think I've learned about myself.
Yeah.
Because obviously you grow through hard times.
Yeah.
That I am an advocate for others. And I think that's where I get my rewards. And I think that helps my productivity, the acceptance of my ADHD, and because that's been quite hard, to it. I felt like I was grieving that person who struggled all those years. If I'd have just known it was the way my brain worked. Um, and so I think the advocacy is massive, and I'll always, this is what I am now. I am advocating. The running, obviously, is I've got to do. There's no like choice in that. I can't ever go, oh, I might just give up marathons now. I think the running I know has got to be, it's
Yeah.
who I am. And the toplessness is who I am. So I think it's really just about keep going, doing what I'm doing and seeing where it's sort of spirals into and where it becomes important and how it empowers. But yeah, my running's just going to be. So what I'm doing next year is I bought a camper, not a camper van, a motorhome. This is
Yeah.
another thing. Another thing that you learn when you come out of something like harsh is that you can do anything. And all the times you've
Absolutely.
not done it is because you've either felt that people have said, like you say, you can't do it, or social norms have said you can't do it, or you've said you can't do it, and actually you can. So I went out and got this motorhome, and I want next year. I've always wanted to do this since I was a kid. Is I'm going to travel around Europe in this motorhome doing topless runs, topless marathons, and then the year after I'm going to try and do the world marathons, and it's kind of that kind of thing. So
Oh,
I'm
the
kind of
majors. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
majors. So it's going
Yeah.
to become like a social media thing of the mobile home will become part of the socials and the running. And also, I think as well with what I found is people connect with the sort of humor in it and just being sort of out on a run. That's maybe not going so well somewhere or something's happened in Europe or the camper vans broke down. So it all becomes part of the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what I thrive in. I thrive in the chaos. I thrive in the it not being not in normality. So that yeah, I think for me that after the book, and then I to be honest, I'm not really planning. I just kind of like I
Yeah.
do what I do and then see where it goes. But if I'm looking at like a plan, that's kind of where I'm going.
Okay. Brilliant. Any particular marathons in Europe you got your eye on?
So I'm not really the European one. I haven't looked at the marathons as much, but Paris definitely.
Paris is okay. It's a good run.
Really,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
The world majors, obviously, I'm like, because you do, don't you? You're like, oh, I'm going to world majors. And it's
Yeah.
funny because I've got quite a lot of followers, and I did quite a few news things for Japanese television, and they're like, come over and do our marathon, and you can come over and do the New York marathon. And so I think I'll be all right getting in the marathons.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously, I'll be doing them topless. But now, what's really good about that reel, the London Marathon, putting it on the reel, is that
Yeah.
that's normalized it for all the other marathons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's some. Yeah. So I think that, and you're right. I think it's good to have that. I suppose that freedom to go. Let's just see where the journey takes
where
us.
it
I suppose.
goes,
Because
because
you
I
get
think,
you don't. Yeah.
yeah, once you structure it and plan it, it won't become fun.
Yeah, I think running, that's the thing about running sometimes, isn't it? There's that old quote, isn't it? You know, run long, run fast, or whatever it is, but don't outlove your run off and run far, but don't outlove your love of running. And I think sometimes when it gets too
Yeah,
structured,
yeah.
you
I don't
can,
like the structure. That's why I like running, because it's free. It's freedom.
yeah, free
It's like
outdoors,
being
yeah, freedom,
five. I mean, that's what I like, because it is. You're five, you run, and then suddenly you stop running.
yeah.
Not everyone does, but most people do. And you're like, well, why not?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I
because
mean, I was fat, and
it's like,
you feel trapped when you're
yeah,
overweight, and I've been overweight. You feel the best analogy I ever used about that was when you're fat. Oh, fat. I'll just use the word fat. You feel trapped.
yeah,
And when I started running outdoors, even after the freedom, you just feel free to be able
free.
to just go and you can just go and do it. And it's always the freedom that I loved
Yeah,
first and foremost over and above. I mean, all the marathons and the times, like I love all that stuff. That's great, and that gives me sustenance. But it's the freedom
yeah.
when you haven't had it. When I felt I never had it,
Wow.
having that freedom is just like
Yeah.
especially when you're like 20 years older and you're not in your it's just fantastic. So one more thing I wanted to touch on, you're a world record holder as well, I believe.
Yeah. So well, that's been broken.
That's it.
Yeah, actually, and that's why I did it. So I did the world record. I asked about it being topless, and they were like, "Well, it has to be something someone can beat." So like they said, the fastest, the fast.
Yeah,
But what they never put is the fastest topless. So they put, I've got it up on there. It says the fastest marathon with a double mastectomy,
yeah,
female. Well, obviously it wasn't fast because I'm not fast,
yeah.
fast. But it was about making it normal so that people will go, "Oh, I'm going to beat that." Because as soon as you put a challenge up, everyone's
Oh,
like,
everyone's that's
but
it. Yeah,
nobody did. It's not like they did it topless. It's just that they actually said, "Oh, I've got a mastectomy," so it wasn't like a shame. It took away the shame. But the lady who beat that, she beat it not long after I did it, actually, because I found it. I looked for it because I wanted to see if anyone had actually took the challenge, and I think it was the Sydney Marathon.
oh right, okay.
And she did it. She said, "I'm making lemonade out of lemons, and I'm gonna get this." And she got the world record. I think she did it an hour less than me. It wasn't about the time, but yeah, and that was amazing because that was what it was always about. It was not
Absolutely.
about
Yeah,
me. I mean, I've
absolutely.
got it on my wall, but it was about, I'd created it because I had to create it. You know how you create some are there and you have to create others.
Yeah, yeah.
I created that for other people to go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to beat that."
Brilliant. I mean, and that's like you said, that's the thing, isn't it? It's that, oh, I can do that, or I can do
Yeah.
that, or
And that's what she wouldn't have done that if I hadn't created
no.
it. And that's the reward I got, not the reward of getting it was never about, oh, I've got a Guinness World Record. It was about the fact that I'd created. Because I think as well with ADHD, you're always wanting to create.
Yes.
And if you're
Yes.
not creating, it damages you. That's how I feel about my neurodiversities. I just feel if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I get
Yeah.
damaged. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was about that and that creativity again.
And it creates a niche, doesn't it? Because it's like I often say this about marathons. Like I'm sure when they look at the ballots and things like that, they don't want Johnny 3 hours. They want people like you. They want people who've not done it before. They want stories.
Yeah.
You want stories, don't you? So that's why I think it's you want that because that means that a few people. Well, actually, there's a chance I could do that. I'm never going
Yeah.
to win one, but I could.
Yeah.
I've had a mistake. So I could perhaps do that.
I can do that.
You know what
Yeah,
I
and then
mean?
it creates ripples, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
and then it passes on to somebody else, and
Yeah.
and I think that's what's the human spirit, isn't it? It's about being human. And
Yeah.
like you say, you can watch a race and they're all winning and they're really fast, and you're like, oh, that's amazing. You do get inspired, but to get inspired by some of the people that run those marathons, I mean, when I'm with those people, and you get this, and they're all just doing these amazing things for all these really resilient stories, or for someone that they loved and lost, or oh my god, I can't. I can't explain that feeling to people who don't run like marathons or races for charity or anything like that. That feeling that you get from that. Oh, it's
The people, the
you can
events. I mean,
never
yeah.
get that feeling anywhere else.
Absolutely. I often say it's the events. I like to race and do my bits and my bobs because it's more of a challenge for me from where I've started from. But actually, the one thing that I've always loved is just the event and
Yeah.
the people. And, like you said, you do get a bit of grief online because it's the way it works. But actually, when you go to these events, it's people get the wrong impression. They think it's all going to be athletes, and it's not. It's the people like
No.
you, and it's the stories, and it's Christina I've spoken to, and it's Amy that I've spoken to, lost 10 stone, and a couple of suicides. It's these people that
Yeah.
these stories, and you're like, that's that program a few years ago, Mind Over Marathon, when it was the Royals did it with those and the stories. This
Oh
woman
God.
who, oh my, and I get now, she was telling this story about how she lost her son and then her husband killed him, and she did
Oh,
the marathon, yeah, London, and she did it for Mind, and it was just. And
oh
this
wow.
woman, she across the finish line. She had someone else. It was like a group of people with mental health issues, varying different situations. And the one with 9 hours, she did it, and she was, and the look on her face when she finished, you think, that's what it's
Yeah.
for. That
Yeah.
person there, because it
That,
meant so much to this woman. She
yeah.
was just absolutely elated. And I think, yeah, that's the important thing. So for me, that's a wonderful, wonderful place to finish. It's a wonderful place to message numerous messages. I feel inspired. By talking to you today, I think it's been I knew it would be. I didn't know it'd be this good, but I knew it'd be good, and it's very inspiring, Louise. And I'd just like to say a very heartfelt from me. Thank you. I know how busy you are, so thank you. You've got a lot going on. So, anything else from you today?
No, I just want to thank you. I love talking to people like you. I love it.
Oh,
I
good.
just because it doesn't happen every day.
No.
And then when you meet someone and you connect in that way of they
Yeah.
understand and you're like, oh my God, they get it, they get it. And it's just, and like you say, it's inspiring for me. And then I just want to go running.
I
Like,
speak to some people, I said this to, I think it was Amy Edwards. I speak to some people. I'm 74. I'm doing my first marathon. Honestly, I speak to some people. Because you think like dealing with all the athlete types, and you speak to some people, you some stories, and you're like, yeah,
yeah,
that's what we need some more of that. So I'm very sort of privileged to speak to incredible people that I connect with, and thank you for sharing and being so open because that's we're dealing with sensitive stuff here, so
yeah.
I appreciate that as well. So, firstly, I will say this: so make sure that you go and give Louise a follow on Instagram. She's Louise Butcher 39, all one word. You'll find her there. Her book comes out at the end of the month, 26th of June, as I believe, which is Going Topless. That's a memoir. I'll get a link for that and put it in the description as well. I'll also put obviously a link for Breast Cancer UK. Is it that you do most of your work?
Breast cancer now.
Breast Cancer Now. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll share Breast Cancer Now as well. So make sure you give that, and of course, if follow me as well. 12 Months to Marathon, and don't forget to drop me a star rating and share this podcast. This is one of the ones you want to share because these are the stories that we like, and I think for those people out there who are struggling in any way with anything, this shows you how a simple thing like running can change things and can connect people in incredible ways. So yeah, hopefully this will be a platform for people to be inspired and go out and do the things. Yeah, don't forget to drop me a follow. 12 Months to Marathon, and yeah, please. The star ratings on Spotify really help, and also the likes and shares as well really, really help. So, thank you again, Louise, for your time today. I appreciate it very much, and thank you to everyone for listening. And I'll speak to you all again very soon.